Professor Yergin, I look at all that's going on in Brazil. Is it a metaphor for where the oil economy is going in the next 20 and 30 years?
Oh, I think it is. Yesterday, I was the meetings here in New York with President Rousseff, and very definitely she made it clear, she said it publicly, the recognition that for 10 years, China was a large degree driving the Brazilian economy and certainly driving the price of oil, and the recognition that's over. It's a different era. We're in a new era dominated by U.S. shale.
Let's look at oil right now, of course, with the energy independence of America changing things as it has over 60 years. This is oil adjusted for inflation. For those of you on radio, I'll put out this classic chart with the collapse, Katya Porzakansky, in 1986. And there we are now down again to dirt cheap prices on oil.
Absolutely. And I think with Brazil, they really can't cut a break. With Petrobras, they have these policies that are really strangling it, right? When oil prices go up, they also lose money because they have to sell at capped prices. So I'm curious what you have to say about this. I mean, in a 2011 interview, you said that Brazil was going to be the powerhouse of oil by 2020 in Latin America. But Mexico is opening up. Has your opinion changed on the matter?
Yeah. I mean, I think yesterday the new president of Petrobras announced a much lower budget, about 40% lower, lowered their estimates for what their 2020 production will be, because they got themselves into this thing where Petrobras had to be in everything, 30%. It had of every deal. It had to operate it, way too much debt on its shoulders and beyond its capacity. And they had these local content rules that drove up prices, meaning that, you know, I talked to the CEO of one oil company. He said, you know, Brazil's not on our agenda.
Daniel Yergin, in your book, The Price, which, of course, all of us have read cover to cover, literally like the advent of Shell Petroleum was out of a suitcase. It was a guy traveling, working out of a suitcase. Those days are over. The romance of that is over. Are these institutions in charge of their destiny? Is Russian oil in charge of its destiny, or is Exxon?
I think that right now what's in charge of the destiny is this new country that's the swing producer in world oil, which happens to be the United States, which happens to be decisions by hundreds of produced in the United States, plus Wall Street, plus financiers. That's the swing producer right now. It's not Saudi Arabia.
Is there enough humility there in case Edward Morris gets his lower oil prices?
Well, I think there's already been what John D. Rockefeller would call a good sweating. People have gone through it. They've bounced back from it. But I do think, you know, the thing about Brazil, just to go back to that, it's quite true. Remember, 3 or 4 years ago when President Obama went down to Brazil, he talked about giving Exim Bank money to Brazil to produce oil so the United States could import it. That's how quickly things have changed.
Now, speaking of Petrobras, it has some great assets, but it's got a huge debt burden, and it's got these profit-draining policies that it's subjected to because of being in Brazil. Do you think that it'll ever regain its lost status of being a well-run national oil company?
Well, I think technically Petrobras is. I mean, it's at the forefront of the offshore. It's discovered the pre-salt, which people didn't think was possible. So we shouldn't forget that it's technically a very accomplished and capable company, one of the pioneers of the offshore. But I think they've got to cut through this debt problem. They've got to get away from the kind of oil nationalism policies they had. And the new president, you know, by cutting the budget, they're going to divest resources. They've got to get back into focused on what they're best at.
Okay, so Mexico is doing that in their own way.
Mexico's a big story.
Are you optimistic about Russia doing that?
I think Russia, you know, was opening up to, you know, Western technology. Then Ukraine came and it shut down. Now Russia is saying we're going to reorient to China. In fact, Russia has now overtaken Saudi Arabia as the largest foreign supplier of oil.
I want to pin you down a price in 12 months. Everybody wants to know what Yergin guesses is the price out.
With all the caveats about Iran and Greece and everything, all the caveats. Yeah. So for, you know, next year, I think prices in the kind of mid-60-ish range. Maybe I'd say put it in that range. But we'll check back in a year, and it depends what happens in the world.
Well, of course, and I was just going to ask you, what's the most interesting debate for you right now going on in the world? Is it clean energy in the U.S.? Is it the potential for U.S. exporting oil? Is it, you know, Iran, Iraq barrels coming online again?
Well, I think it's all of those. I think exporting oil is still a very hot question. It's irrational. I mean, we're the largest exporter of oil products, but we don't export crude oil. We want to balance the system. But I think it's Iran coming back into the market and the impact that has and how the Iranians want to manage that.